Yeah, and as Zoom advises us, I'm going to call out that if you don't choose to be recorded, feel free to turn off your video audio, though we would love to see all of you on video. And the more engagement we have, the better it would be. I would request you to keep your audios muted unless you have a question. You can raise your digital hands and the panel will be very happy to answer your questions. With that, let's jump right into the session. I understand they have a very heavily packed session called as Experience Team Coaching, and I'm ready to experience what it looks like. If I may introduce the first panelist, Saraswati or Saras. With her 25 years, she calls it a reflection of joy she gets from co-creation and learning for growth. She is an executive and leadership coach accredited EMCC and ACTC by ICF. She is also an accredited team coach practitioner by EMCC. Her expertise is in whole systems change and LSIP practitioner and facilitator. Next up is Nitin. Nitin, if you can wave your hand, is personified by passion and drive. He has served in IT industry for 25 years as a corporate leader. He is also an ICF PCC and team coach practitioner by EMCC. He's an award-winning coach who's been working with systems and teams as a coach for the past 6 years. Lucky if we can see you wave your hand. She thrives in having deep conversations with people. In a span of the last 20 years, she's worked in Middle East, North Africa, and South Asia. She is an ICF PCC, team coach practitioner by EMCC, and a TAM practitioner. I don't know what that is, Lucky, so I would want to know what that is. Along with her experience as an entrepreneur and leader, Lucky is also an award-winning researcher on employee behaviors. With that, I hand it over to the panel. I'm guessing, Nitin, you will take the charge from here.
Yeah. So in our team, we have Saras takes the charge. So Saras, over to you.
And I think the important piece to note is we all take charge. We give charge to people when they're willing to take it at certain points. So having said that, thank you very much for having us here. It's a pleasure to be here. What I really wanted to start off with is recalling a little parable or a poem called the Calf Path or Path of the Calf. And what this poem actually spoke about is this calf which kind of meandered and wandered through a particular path and created a small trail to get to where they wanted. And then, followed by a few humans, few animals. And as time would have it, this path became more and more often used. And therefore, it created a proper trail, a more visible trail, which became more and more visible. And it reached a stage where it also was a path where a lot of people, I'm tempted to use the word thoroughfare, but I'm not sure whether we are yet there. But a lot of people started using this path. And the reason why this path of the calf kind of comes to mind is to really say today, team coaching, wherever it is still an evolving science. It is derived from a lot of, OD work, from a lot of human interaction work, human lab work. That's where it actually came from. And today we have the thoroughfare trying to create this thoroughfare and traffic by creating some concrete structures where you have ICF and EMCC, both, and also Association of Coaching, by the way, who are now trying to create more of that infrastructure around this by saying these are the kind of competencies, by saying these are the kind of core standards, what is expected of a team coach, how is team coaching different from the other modalities and so on. So that is where it is today. And the prime focus being it is still an evolving science. So there are various interpretations. There are very similar interpretations. And there are also interpretations which are things which people believe in. So you would find a lot of similarity and then there could be some differences. That's what I'm essentially saying. And so, yes, to this evolving science, which seems to be a big need in corporates today, particularly with the pandemic, I think all of us know that the pace of change has become so fast. It's all about how do you adapt while you have a context of, people who are working together remotely, people who are working together in a particular space. So I think all these dynamics have kind of added to it for this thing to really become more and more pronounced. So I think the pace of that infrastructure has just kind of increased. So with that, Nitin, do you want to do the needful?
Yeah, so we will start up with C to see, where our audience is. So I'm going to launch a poll. Hi, Ashok. I'm going to launch a poll, and there are certain statements that we have written in that poll. We would like you to pick one statement which is closest to the work that you do. With that, I'm going to launch this poll. Okay, you should be seeing the poll on your screen. Choose the one which is closest to your work.
Drawbacks of being a host, Nitin, I can't see the poll.
I'm sorry. I'm going to publish the results in a short while. Okay, so we have received 24 responses. I'm going to wait for some more time for people to tell us more. (28) last 30 seconds. Okay, last 10 seconds. Okay, so I'm going to end the poll now. I'm going to share the results. Can you guys see the results?
Yeah.
Very interesting. Many people here are individual coaches and don't work with teams. There are many people who work with individual and groups as well.
So interesting thing is 57% have not worked with teams. I think that's a key point to note. While the remaining has some level of experience with teams.
And I think what also draws my attention is that there are people who also work with whole systems. There are 13% of people who work with whole systems. So,
and there are people who have been working in a team for a few years now. So it's an interesting mix.
Yeah.
So we would like to, ask people who have been working with teams, to partner us, share with their experiences. People who are working with whole systems, share your experiences while we go through the program. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing the results and we'll move on now. And I'm going to share the PPT, which I was supposed to do here. Very well.
Yeah. So just this is just all the topics that we would like to cover. You see it as different points here, but our attempt today would be to kind of weave it all together. So integrate it as much as possible. So that's the experience we hope to have in this next 1.5 years. Hours, sorry.
Okay.
So,
Well, lucky.
Lucky, you need to copy paste in the chat, please, this
Yes.
link.
Yeah, I'll do that.
So the idea is to ask all of you, what do you think is at the core of team coaching? Pick two distinct words. You can use this link and put down your responses there.
Sorry, Nitin, you'll need to because the presentation is with you. I am unable to copy from that.
Yep.
Okay, so the link is coming up. Question is, what do you think is at the core of team coaching? And what are the two top words that comes to your mind? Distinct word. So, for example, you can say connections and stakeholder. There are two different words that comes to your mind. What are those top two things that comes to your mind when you look at team coaching? Very interesting.
Ashish, please do use the link which has been given there to put it into the into that Mentimeter box.
Saras, you are going to have fun looking at results. I'm not sharing, but I know.
Now you're getting me curious, sir.
Okay, I'm going to give a couple of more times. 2 more minutes. How many participants do we have?
43. There are 43 participants.
43. Okay, so we have received 28 inputs so far. So I'm going to give another minute for people to respond.
I hope everybody is able to see the link. It's there on chat. Shall we post it once again? Maybe people who've joined in are not able to see it. Let me see if I can do that. There you
I've done that. Okay, the results are staggering at 8 only. Okay, last 10 seconds. I'll stop after that. Yes. Multiple egos, conflict management, common goal, alignment. Alignment, I think, is the biggest one that people are talking about.
So what we're saying is a lot of people are looking at it as common goal, alignment, and purpose. These are three top things that are
the top three things that are coming.
Followed closely by collaboration and relationships. I think those two we kind of anticipated.
Correct. Correct. Yeah. Collaboration and relationships. Yeah. Okay.
And there is communication.
Very, very small.
Yeah, I think one. All right, I think we should move on, Sarus. You wanna?
Sure.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing what you think is at the core of team coaching. And here is what we would like to share as what we see as being at the core of team coaching, and that is dialogues. At the core of team coaching, then you want to move to the PPT?
Yeah, I was actually sharing my screen, but then I realized I was sharing browser and not PPT.
Okay.
Sorry.
So, we kind of played this in our head before, and we were trying to see, how many may come with conversations and so on and so forth. But what we do see is collaboration, alignment, purpose, common goals as coming up as important ones. And what makes us say that dialogues are at the core of team coaching engagements? Because that really is the currency through which all the entities which are involved in a team and with a team are actually using as a mode of connecting, communicating, delivering, and so on and so forth. In fact, very interestingly, if you go and look at the ICF document on team coaching as well, ICF actually says a coach's job is role is to promote dialogues. So a coach in promoting dialogues for the team to have conversation among themselves. So that's what it comes to.
I just want to add, I see common goal, alignment, purpose, collaboration, and there are many other aspects. When we ask the question, what is at the core of team coaching? All of these are essential, right? There's no doubt about it. All of these are essential. But the way to lead to these is the dialogue. And what kind of dialogues, we'll talk about what kind of dialogues you're having, which allows you to reach to a common goal, to an alignment, to a purpose. And that's why we felt, which is supported by research and data as well, is that dialogue is actually at the center of the team coaching. And the job of team coach is to, first of all, understand the kind of dialogues that are happening in the system, and then work with team to co-create what kind of dialogues should be having in the system, and create a journey towards that. Over to you, Saras.
Thanks for that, Nitin. And therefore, how we define team coaching is as a process of collective inquiry through expression and absorption to co-create shared meaning. And what we actually mean by this is, and actually the process of collective inquiry is actually what ends up creating the journey of collaboration. So it's a process. It is not a point in time. It is something that happens over a period of time, and it's a space where the team comes together to think together, so that they're able to co-create what they are discovering through that process and create their shared meaning. Whether it is interacting with stakeholders and understanding what is it that you really want and what are we trying to deliver, what's happening here, understanding within the team itself, saying what's working and what's not working with us. So for example, I'd like to share with you this example. Working with a team which thought that they need to work on the different parts of the team coming together. When they actually went back and spoke to the stakeholder actually came back to them and said, you know what, whether you're working together or in parts, that's not what I'm looking at. That is how you work. What I actually want is that you're able to look at my needs as a business and therefore ensure that what you're doing is customized to what I need as a business. And this is, of course, one of the shared functions. So I think what came up is that collective inquiry that this team actually went through was a process for them to understand what is the shared meaning that they are understanding through the voice of the stakeholder and creating this for themselves. It's a co-discovery process. Lucky, the reason why I've not spoken about expression and absorption is I know you're passionate about it. So please go ahead.
Yeah, so basically, when we talk about collective inquiry, right? I mean, there is two components to a process of inquiry. One is expression, and that expression comes through verbal, non-verbal cues, which as coaches we are all familiar with. And the other is the absorption, which is equally, and most often as team coaches, we tend to focus more on the expression and not on the absorption, which is also equally important. And what enables it is by and large the competencies that we are all very familiar with, which is listening, presence, and also the intent and or the mindset with which we are present in that particular conversation or dialogue. And that then enables the shared meaning to kind of come together, which leads to common understanding, which leads to better action, and so on. I think we were talking about those feedback loops, right, Saris? Which because this kind of an expression and the absorption, the iteration of it, that kind of creates a loop, which is a feedback loop, which then leads to clarity, which then leads to agreement, action. And when you have a few iterations of that essentially enables learning and sustenance of whatever we are trying to create in the team, whether as a team coach or as part of the team. And that is why it becomes important for us in that aspect of defining dialogues.
And just to add to that, without the process of dialogue, it will not happen. So it won't be a collective inquiry.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really the key. That and interestingly, when you look at the ICF document as well, you would notice that right from presence to listening to evoking awareness and to learning and growth, you will find that there is a clear reference to dialogue.
Mm.
But what creates that dialogue, which leads to expression and absorption, I think is the most important thing.
Absolutely. And I keep because Nitin keeps talking, quotes David Clutterberg's definition. I mean, what he says about coaching focusing on the dialogue and not the content of it. And recently, we had an interaction with Peter Hawkins in one of our posts where Saras had mentioned about dialogue. And I quote, just a minute, he says that dialogue is at the heart of all systemic coaching and systemic team coaching. And that's a larger conversation, but that's the essence of it, right? Like when we are looking at systems, when we are looking at having conversations in dialogues in organizations, this becomes extremely important for everything else to happen, whether it is collaboration, whether it is all these common goals to be set or alignment. Dialogue is key.
Okay, so with that, let's get into our next session. Saras.
Thanks. And therefore, what is this dialogue? I think, Nitin, you mentioned saying that what kind of dialogues that you're having and what is the quality of the dialogues that you're having. I think those are very important. For example, a team that we were working with. This team was this is a leadership team, owner-driven company, and when we walked in and we were having conversations about what they would like to do, etc. It was very interesting to note that in this team, everybody agreed in the meeting as to what was being said by the leader. And then when we had some one-to-one interactions, to understand a bit more about it, a lot more things came up. So what became evident for us is that when teams are talking nice and they're trying to be polite with each other, they are most probably not having honest conversations among themselves. So if that conversation needs to become a dialogue, there has to be an honesty in that. And that honesty is basically brilliant. Thanks, Johnny, for saying that. Agreement is not equal to alignment. Absolutely, absolutely. It's such a beautiful way of saying it, because when you're talking nice, what it basically is indicating is that probably there is not enough safety for me to express my thoughts, and therefore the expression and absorption becomes important. If there is enough safety, if that container is safe enough to say that, yes, I can express my thoughts, then maybe there could be a different point of view that could emerge. And I'm just wondering, if you have been part of such a team or interacted as a team coach or a group coach with such a team, what are the behaviors that you have noticed this team display? And if you could just type it into the chat, please. It'd be lovely to see some responses. Sure, Srinivas, they might avoid that in group. And that's what. So the question is really, have you interacted with a team which is talking nice, or been part of a team which is talking nice? What are the behaviors? What's happening? Johnny, I notice you say open and fierce conversation. If I'm talking nice, would they have open and fierce conversations?
So most probably, is it number 2?
No, sorry, I missed that. I was defining what generative dialogue is.
I see. Okay.
Sorry, my bad.
So we will come back to that, Johnny. We will keep that in our time. We'll leverage. All right. Anybody else who wants to share about some of the behaviors that they have encountered? A team which, which is talking nice. Idolizing the leader. Okay. Avoiding confrontation. Absolutely. No one wants to be in the defending mode. Yes. Agree and be done and get on with it.
Who will bail the cat?
Who will bail the cat? Absolutely. Absolutely. Lovely. Yes, sir. Mode. My thoughts to myself. Yeah. Remain expressionless. Absolutely. So lovely. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing all these behaviors that you're noticing about this team. So the idea so as a team coach, if you're supposed to promote dialogue, and that's what you do, then it's about ensuring that there is, how can this team start expressing itself? And maybe teams can move to the next stage where they're open to state what they are feeling and their points of view are. So therefore, there is a better expression. There is probably more safety, and teams which are talking tough are in a position where there is confrontation. So there is allowing of expression. And but the question is, if there is a lot of tough talk that's happening, what could help this team to move up? Because if you don't do anything about it, it's quite possible that the team slides back to talking nice. Because now they don't want to say anything, right? You see a lot of reactions. They want to be safe. They want to keep quiet. So while there is a lot of expression that's happening, the expression most probably is not leaving everybody feeling safe. And therefore, maybe a few people are just sharing. And that's also a process that happens in a team when they're working towards getting to a dialogue. Bring in the listening to talking. Brilliant. Johnny, I'm going to use all of these as my leverage for the next one. You're already moving up the chain. Thank you for so much. But question to all of you is about saying, what are the behaviors you would notice this team displaying? Please put it in chat.
I think some people, when there's a tough talk in the team, some people may go into silence.
Lovely. There are some beautiful responses coming up, and absolutely right, Nitin. Defending and positioning. I'm okay. You're not okay. A lot of defense. and yeah, there is not listening. So there is listening or there is saying, but so expression, is there absorption? I think that's the question, right? All right, and they show their own identity. Absolutely, absolutely. Judgments, attacking personalities, etc. Thank you so much for sharing all these behaviors that you would notice in that team. And therefore, now the critical question for this team is, and the team coaches, how do you create a dialogue where people are actually starting to inquire, and as this this expression starts becoming a dialogue and turns into an inquiry. It is about inquiring about, okay, what am I trying to say? What am I trying to mean? Is it fitting into what this purpose is? So there is some amount of reflection, and there is a lot of expression that's happening with the empower and make them have ownership to resolve issues. Thanks, Kannan. Thank you for sharing that. So it is about a state where they are getting into a state of inquiring. They're pausing, they're reflecting. The focus is still on themselves, but they're trying to say, okay, so I can express. It will get absorbed. I am feeling safe, and it is okay to do so. That's the process of creating that reflective dialogic space. So, question: what behaviors would you see here?
Long silence followed by guilt.
Restless silence. Okay. All right. Long silence followed by guilt and shame for things which could have been better. Okay. Possibly, if they have come across, yeah, why not? If they've come across as expressing a very confrontative kind of point of view, where people are stopping and saying, okay, is this what I really want to do? Great. Adding or building on other people's ideas. Okay. Clear understanding of problems. There is restless silence. Clear understanding of problem, but no way towards solution. Right? So in this space, the focus is more about where people are actually learning to express themselves, and they're accepting the differences. Very well put, Ravi. They're willing to accept those differences that exist, and therefore they are curious about being expressive of themselves and also listening. Now they've started listening. Now I'll go back to what Johnny said. Choosing diversity of opinions. Thanks, Deepak, for sharing that. Absolutely. These are the kind of some of the behaviors that get exhibited, which show that. All right. I'm just going to take a quick pause to check in with Lucky and Nitin. Is there anything else you would like to add, or shall we move on to the next one?
I think we should move on. I'm looking at the time.
Great. Thank you. So I know I tend to talk a bit more, so I'll rein it in. And the fourth space is about, actually here, Johnny also said it, and I think Deepak also said it very beautifully. Now you're in a state of flow. There is, through this dialogue, there is meaning that is being exchanged. There is a flow of meaning that's happening. And in this state, people are, so for example, just now what Lucky did was a subtle message to me to say, Saras, watch the time, don't talk too much. And I'm absolutely okay with it. That's the dialogue, right? Because we're building on each other, we're building on our ideas, and we are actually trying to create this flow of meaning, which is above you or me. It is about the larger. And that's where the space of generative dialogue happens. I must be honest with you. As a startup amongst the three of us, I'm experiencing this. But the other spaces I've experienced this has only happened in an annual learning conference. And I remember we all went to Rishikesh Bankside and we were doing an annual learning conference. And in that conference, there were a lot of ideas, and we actually built on ideas because that was the purpose of it. And that environment and the space that got created, there was no judging, there was all listening, there was all curiosity. And therefore, you yourself, through that curiosity, realize, will this idea work or not? For teams to get to the state is, I think, what would be ideal. And for teams to remain in this state, is, I think, a bit ambitious. And the reason for that ambition is that there is so much of change that's happening. The team itself could undergo a change. People may change. So therefore, you may need to recreate these dialogues over and over and over again. And that's how you practice. And I think you carry these practices to the other teams that you're going into, where you can actually help them get into a dialogic space. And from a safety point of view, politeness, safety doesn't seem to be there. Debate, safe enough to express, but if you're not watchful, it may become slide back to being a polite state. Inquiry, there is definitely more safety that's happening. And in a flow, you are actually in the best form of safety space. It doesn't matter even if I'm talking about something which doesn't make any sense. So I'm just going to take a quick pause here. And the reason I want to take a pause is I know that Lucky, you need to come in.
About what, I mean, let's move on, Saras. I think.
Okay, fine. Let's move. All right.
If you're talking about expression, I mean, if expression was the point in terms of,
yes, I was talking about expression and absorption.
Right. I mean, so just quickly, because we were thinking initially that when it comes to politeness, there is absolutely zero expression. But in reality, there is an expression which is inauthentic, and as we move on, along that axis, what we find is the container becomes stronger and more, safer for people to kind of have conversations, have dialogues. And essentially from an inauthentic dialogue, expression to, to the debate and the inquiry. And, what we find here in the generative space is that of flow, which then leads to it being absolutely free flowing. Essentially, I'm not getting the word.
I realized I was on mute. Yeah, free flowing. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wonderful. All right. So all this so far was a lot of, was to really say that the center stage is about how a team coach actually uses the space so that the team is actually able to navigate towards a dialogic collective inquiry. That was the purpose of sharing this. So now let's do a quick exercise.
I would want to ask a question here. I would like to invite people to respond in chat. So we've talked about dialogues, and a coach is seeing these dialogues, right, which are happening in the team. So what is the role of coach here? What does the coach do? Is the role of coach to create a dialogue? Or is the role of a coach is to enable? If enable, what and how? Keep those questions in mind. And if you have answers, write it down in the chat. But if you don't, keep those questions in mind. As we go into the activities, you will realize these questions are going to become more and more important as part of experiencing the team coaching.
And also, I think there is one aspect around, as coaches, do we take note of people who, express, the expression and the absorption that we spoke about earlier? Because generally that tendency to kind of have the focus on the verbal expression rather than of people who are not that interactive in a team coaching environment. And then how is their contribution to actions, to the outcomes that are coming out of the team? So as a team coach and also as a member of a team, because I'm sure that is evident here, because the team of 3 that we are, I'm the least verbose, and there has been a constant struggle to kind of, because I am the person who absorbs rather than expresses. And obviously, there has been a kind of we complement each other in a lot of ways that way. So as a team coach, there are aspects that we need to be looking for as well. When people are silent, what is that silence indicate? Whether it is indifference, whether it is a nature, those are aspects to think about.
So I can see a question Subhash is asking, a very very important question. We'll probably address that in a while. He's asking what is the focus on dialogue? What about setting goals? And we'll get there, Subhash. In a very short sentence, if I were to say, a generative dialogue is required to reach goals. And if the dialogues are not right, that I don't know if the goals will be right either. And that's where I will stop right now. Okay, move to the next slide.
All right, yes, please. And therefore, when we are moving to the next slide, Lucky, you want to, why are we talking about it here? Okay, so let me go ahead.
So this is what happens, right? When you have a person who doesn't talk much, the others take extra effort to make them talk. So essentially, core standards is something that we wanted to cover. What we are weaving it into an activity that we have for you in the next slide. And we would like you all to look at each of the standard. I mean, pick one standard based on your room number, hopefully, and have a conversation around it, have a dialogue around it, and we'll share the remaining.
So we are going to break you out into 12 rooms.
Correct.
A corresponding room, pick up the EMCC core standard. If you are room one, pick the first one.
Screenshot of the.
Yes.
Take a screenshot. Take a screenshot.
Brilliant.
So take a screenshot. I'll hold on for a minute before I move to the next slide. Okay, shall I move? Yeah, go ahead, Lucky.
Okay. So you've already started the breakout rooms, Nitin?
No, not yet, not yet.
Okay. So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to put you into breakout rooms so that you can have a dialogue. And the dialogue is around the core standard. We've shared with you the core standard. I hope you've taken a picture of it. And each room will correspond to the one core standard that you're going to have a dialogue around. And let's see how you are experiencing the dialogue that's happening within your breakout room.
Okay, so I'm going to stop the share because I need to create the breakout rooms. Okay, create breakout rooms 12. Assign automatically, include co-hosts when assigning. Okay, there you go. Open all rooms. And I'm going to send the notification when the activity is about to stop.